Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to the updated Kazuha guide for patch 2.8, where I'm going to be going over all of his best weapons, artifacts, stat prioritization, talents, and team comps that you can use him in, as well as the most frequently asked questions that people have about Kazuha. Now, quickly, I do stream on Twitch. I do stream most nights on Twitch. Link in the description for that. Now let's get into the guide. First, we have Kazuha's talents. Most importantly are his passive talents, Poetics of Fubutsu. He has the ability to buff his other party members with extra elemental damage bonuses based on the amount of elemental mastery that he has. With his other passive talent, Salmon Swordsmanship, he is able to infuse his elemental skill with other elements that may be applied on enemies, and when he does the plunging attack portion of his elemental skill, he will do an extra instance of damage of the element that he is swirling with, doing extra damage based on his attack. Now, looking at his burst, it allows him to both swirl, giving that elemental damage bonus from his first passive, as well as infuse his burst with an element, allowing for additional types of reactions and infusions and upkeep of that swirling buff. With his elemental skill, he jumps into the air, sucks enemies in, and then plunges down into the ground. When doing this skill, you can either press for a weaker pull in and a shorter cooldown, or you can hold for a wider radius on the pull in as well as a stronger effect and have a longer duration on the cooldown. Now, looking at his normal attacks, you most often are going to ignore these in a support DPS Kazuha. The reason why you would want to level this is because of the plunging aspect of his elemental skill. This counts as a plunging attack, so in order to help the damage out with that a little bit, you would want to level up your talents for that. In general, for an elemental mastery focused build, talents are not very important for Kazuha, as the majority of his damage will come from his swirl. Speaking of builds, there's a lot of discussion whether elemental mastery or crit Kazuha has better damage for Kazuha individually. Now, Kazuha, not only is he able to buff his other teammates by building elemental mastery, but also is able to do in group target situations much more damage with swirl. You can specifically see that with his interactions with swirl. Now, one thing that many people don't understand about Kazuha is when he is swirling enemies that each have different applications of elements on them, he is able to do extra damage and swirl, and that swirl does AoE. So let us put some electro on all of these people, and you will see that there were multiple instances of electro damage, more than just 3. That is because the swirling pulses and deals damage in an AoE situation, meaning that in large group enemy fights, no matter what, Kazuha EM build is going to do more damage. Now, he might do slightly less damage in single or low target fights with EM versus a crit build. However, the damage boost that he gives to the rest of his team will be much more in a elemental mastery focused team, and thus elemental mastery is the strongest build that you can build for him, and so that's what we will focus on here in this video. Taking a look at the best artifact set for Kazuha, almost universally the best artifact set for him is going to be 4-piece Viridescent Venerer. This set is incredibly good for Kazuha, both because of his ability to increase his own damage with the Anemo damage bonus and the 60% damage increase with swirl, but also his ability to shred the resistance of other enemies that are affected by his swirl. This means that once again, he is increasing the damage of his swirls, as well as increasing the damage that other teammates in the party are also going to be doing even further after Kazuha has shredded their resistance. For builds with this, you're going to want to run Kazuha with a triple elemental mastery in the crown, cup, sands, and try to get as much energy recharge and elemental mastery as you can in your feather and flower. Now, on top of that, you are going to want to try to get around a total of 20 to 30% crit because of the weapon suggestion that will be going in. Obviously, for weapons, Freedom Sworn is Kazuha's best in slot weapon and his signature weapon, and is going to net him the most amount of damage while being able to give him 200 elemental mastery, as well as giving the rest of his team normal attack, plunging attack, charge attack damage bonuses, and attack damage bonuses as well. For 4-star options, however, many people erroneously believe that Iron Sting is Kazuha's best in slot option, and it is not a bad option because it does give a little bit of elemental mastery, and its passive has some usage for Kazuha, though it does not amplify his swirl damage and so isn't that great. The sword that I recommend most for Kazuha is Favonius Sword. This weapon is exceptionally good for Kazuha because as a support character and typically run with being the only animo unit in a party, Kazuha needs quite a bit of energy recharge. As a baseline, people generally recommend around 170 to 180 energy recharge for C0 Kazuha, though using Favonius Sword or even Sacrificial Sword brings that down to around a 150-160% energy recharge requirement. Sacrificial Sword is a decent option, however, without refinements, the long cooldown on the ability to proc the extra elemental skill, as well as the low chance of proccing it, makes Favonius Sword much better, though some people enjoy the extra plunge attacks that can come with a Sacrificial Sword. Favonius Bow, however, is incredibly good, even at R1 all the way up to R5, becoming absolutely amazing, and is the go-to recommendation for Kazuha. Now, if you are dead set on using Iron Sting on your Kazuha, please make sure that you have at least 160 energy recharge from the substats alone from your artifacts. This is a really good option to use on him if you are newer to the game and don't have any Sacrificial Swords or Favonius Swords to use. Now, if you can't get that substats, you also can use a energy recharge sands while you're working on building up either those weapons or getting those energy recharge needed in your substats. Now, speaking of constellations for Kazuha, right off the bat, Kazuha absolutely does not need any constellations. He is an incredible S tier unit without any constellations at all. Constellation 1, however, is pretty decent. It does reduce the cooldown of your elemental skill by a little bit, as well as resets its cooldown entirely after you use your elemental burst, which can help as well with energy recharge needs. Constellation 2 is an extremely good constellation, giving an additional elemental mastery both to Kazuha himself as well as to his entire party, which can help damage and reactions a lot in teams that require a lot of elemental mastery or that benefit from elemental mastery. And this is another reason why energy recharge is so crucial to have on Kazuha, so that you can maintain 100% uptime on his burst as much as possible. Constellation 3 in an EM build does not matter that much. As we talked about earlier, talent levels are not that consequential in an EM Kazuha focused thing. Constellation 4 further reduces the energy recharge requirements that Kazuha needs, making it more and more likely that you would want to use a weapon with an EM focus like Iron Sting or especially Freedom Sworn, which at the point you're having Constellation 4, I would hope that you would have Freedom Sworn already for him. Constellation 5, once again, in an EM build is not that consequential, but it does give a little bit of extra damage. Constellation 6 is pretty much entirely unnecessary for Kazuha in an EM focused build, as his elemental burst will already be swirling and activating those swirls on cooldown, but is a fun extra little thing that can allow you to do a more main DPS focused Kazuha build. Going any higher than Constellation 2, I would say, is really not recommended for Kazuha. Now, talking about team comps briefly for Kazuha, there are many team comps that Kazuha fits in well, both because of his elemental damage buffing capabilities, as well as his ability to swirl and use viridescent veneer, resist shred, and also give EM buffs if you have Constellation 2. Almost any team that focuses on elemental damage can benefit from Kazuha being in there. Exceptions to that obviously are Geo teams. That's pretty much it. Taser teams can benefit from Kazuha, especially if you have Constellation 2. Vaporized teams are incredible with Kazuha. Freeze teams as well. Ayaka Freeze and Ganyu Melt all benefit greatly from Kazuha. And one team that actually can extremely benefit from Kazuha is Raiden Hyper Carry, where you put Raiden, Kazuha, Kujo-Sara, and Bennett. And specifically what you want to do in this team is you want to make sure that when you Kazuha's burst, you specifically want to infuse it with pyro damage. And the result of this will cause, because you have so much electro application going out with Raiden and Kujo-Sara, you will be able to, on pyro hits, have Kazuha overloading, and in a full EM build, you will be able to hit overloads for around 17 to 20,000 damage, boosting Kazuha's damage in this specific team quite a lot. So, as you can see, Kazuha is an extremely versatile and broken character that can fit into a vast majority of different team comps, and many times will be the best option to fit in those team comps. I highly recommend that you pick up Kazuha if you have any desire for him, as any team that you possibly can build will most likely benefit from him. I really hope this guide was helpful. Please leave a like and comment, as it really helps in the YouTube algorithm, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.